This is the 3D Viewmaster fairy tale Jack and the Beanstalk. Viewmaster Reel 1. Picture 1. Once upon a time there lived a poor widow whose son, Jack, did nothing but sit and dream of adventure. One day his mother said, "Son, food is scarce. We must sell the cow, or we will have nothing to eat. Take her to the marketplace, but mind you, get a good price." Halfway to town, Jack met a queer-looking stranger who said, "Boy, will you sell me your cow?" "Yes," replied Jack, "but I must get a good price." "I will give you a good price," the stranger said, holding out a handful of beans. "But that is no price," cried Jack. "Nothing but beans?" "Ah," said the man, "but these beans are magic beans. Plant them tonight, and in the morning the beanstalks will reach the sky." Picture 2. When Jack's mother learned he had sold the cow for nothing but beans, she was angry. Sending him straight to bed, she threw the beans out the window. In the morning they found, to their astonishment, that the beans had taken root. A gigantic beanstalk towered over their cottage and disappeared into the clouds. "I will climb it," cried Jack, "and see what lies at its top." Picture 3. He began to climb. He climbed until the cottage looked like a dollhouse. Then he climbed until he could see it no more because it was below the clouds. At last he reached the top of the beanstalk. There, above a bank of fleecy clouds, lay a wonderful land, like nothing he had ever seen. Before his eyes lay a path over the clouds, and at the end of the path was a towering castle. Picture 4. Reaching the castle after a long walk, Jack found that everything in it was enormous. Then, when he saw piles of human bones lying about, he knew the castle belonged to a wicked giant. Suddenly he heard a roaring voice. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." Jack hid in a closet, trembling until the giant gave up the search and sat down at a table where he bellowed, "Why, fetch my dinner and my treasures." Peering through a crack in the door, Jack saw the giant devour half an ox. Wash it down with a keg of wine, then take out 2 huge bags of gold. The giant counted his money, then roared at a little brown hen. "Lay!" The hen laid 4 golden eggs. Then to a golden harp he said, "Play!" And the harp played the sweetest music ever heard. Picture 5. Soon the giant fell asleep, and Jack crept out of the closet. Gathering up the giant's treasures, he ran for the door. But suddenly the golden harp sang out, "Master, master!" The giant awoke with a roar and started after Jack. Fortunately, the giant was too full to run fast, and by the time he reached the beanstalk, Jack was already climbing down. Picture 6. The beanstalk quivered and swayed as the giant started down it. Down Jack went, slipping and sliding in his haste. The instant his feet touched the earth, He seized the axe his frightened mother held out to him and chopped away at the beanstalk. In the nick of time he chopped clear through it, and the giant fell to the ground with a crash that shook the countryside. He would never eat another human again. Picture 7. Jack laid out the giant's treasure on the table. "Mother," he said, "our fortune is made. We have 2 bags of gold, a hen that lays golden eggs, and a harp that will fill our days with music. Now are you sorry I sold a cow for beans?" Viewmaster Reel 2, The Ugly Duckling. Picture 1. One summer a mother duck sat impatiently on her nest, which held only 1 large egg. The other 4 had hatched out for downy yellow ducklings. "It must be a turkey egg," an old drake told her. "Leave it and teach your other children to swim." But the mother duck sat on and on. At last the big egg hatched and a large grey ugly duckling scrambled out of the shell. Picture 2. The mother duck was afraid that it was a turkey chick after all. She took her young ones to the pond, but the ugly grey creature swam just as well as the others. "Well, it isn't a turkey," said the mother to herself. In the barnyard, the other birds all said nice things about the 4 little yellow ducklings, but, looking at the big grey one, said, "What an ugly duckling!" They all hated it because it was so different. The girl that fed them kicked it out of the way. The ducks bit it, the hens pecked at it, and the turkeys spurred it. They finally drove the poor duckling away. Picture 3. The ugly duckling swam into the marsh grasses where the wild ducks lived. But even the wild ducks would have nothing to do with him. He made friends with 2 wild ganders who wanted him to fly north, but hunters shot them. The hunter's dog ran up to the frightened duckling, but it stopped, and after 1 look ran off. "I'm so ugly, not even the dog will bite me," the poor duckling thought sorrowfully. Picture 4. The ugly duckling lived in the woods through the summer and fall, growing larger and more awkward. As the winter cold set in, ice began to form in the forest pond. He had to swim round and round to keep the water from freezing. One night, while he slept, the pond froze solid, imprisoning the duckling. The next morning a farmer found a poor bird, chopped him free of the ice, and took him home for the children to play with. Picture 5. In a warm house, the duckling revived. The children, eager to play with him, reached out for him. This terrified the bird. He knocked over a milk pail, stepped in a butter tube, and flew out the door into the cold. During that winter he suffered many hardships. Most of the time he huddled in a small cave waiting for the warming rays of the sun. Soon the sun rose earlier, gave more warmth, and stayed in the sky longer. Picture 6. As the countryside grew green in the spring sunshine, the ugly duckling spread his wings and flew to a great garden where apple trees stood in bloom. He skimmed the waters of a flower-filled lake and caught sight of 2 beautiful birds. They were white swans. As he floated toward them, he saw their reflections in the mirror-smooth water. There were 3 swans. Picture 7. He saw in the water that one of the swans was himself. A winter's growth had turned him into a beautiful white bird. Children came down to the lake to feed the swans. One cried, "Look, there's a new swan that is more beautiful than all the others." The other swans welcomed him. Holding his graceful neck high, he exclaimed, "When I was an ugly duckling, I never dreamed that so much happiness was possible." Viewmaster Reel 3. Hansel and Gretel. Picture 1. Once upon a time, a poor woodcutter lived near a great forest with his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel, and their cruel, selfish stepmother. A famine came, and the woodcutter could not longer earn their daily bread. One night the children woke to hear their stepmother's shrill voice. "This half a loaf of bread is all we have. I will not starve for the sake of those children. We must give them each a scrap of bread, take them deep into the forest and lose them." She left the poor man no peace until he agreed. Hansel comforted his sister, saying, "Don't cry, I have a plan that will enable us to find our way home." Picture 2. As the wicked woman proposed, the children were led deep into the woods at daybreak. Hansel's plan was to leave a trail of breadcrumbs by which they would find their way back. But looking back, he found to his dismay that the birds of the forest were eating the crumbs as fast as he threw them down. Picture 3. In the very middle of the forest, the children were left by a fire and told to stay. They ate what bread they had left, and at last lay down and slept in each other's arms. When they awoke, it was dark. The beasts of the forest were prowling all around them, and they did not know which way to turn. Picture 4. For 2 days and nights they wandered through the forest, frightened and alone. They had nothing to eat but wild berries and nothing to drink but water from the brooks. On the 3rd day they came upon a clearing in the middle of which stood a little house. For a moment they couldn't believe their eyes. The house was made of cake and gingerbread and cookies and candy. With cries of joy the starving children rushed to the house and began to eat as they had never eaten before. Suddenly they stopped, for a harsh, shrill voice had cried out, "Who's that nibbling at my house?" Picture 5. The owner of the voice appeared. It was a hideous old witch who had built a gingerbread house to lure little boys and girls. Seizing Hansel in her claw-like hands, she cackled wickedly as she shoved him into a little stable and locked it. "Now, lazy bones," she said to Gretel, "heat some water and cook food for your brother. When he is fat enough, I will eat him." Picture 6. For 3 weeks Hansel was fed the best of everything, while Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Each day the witch asked him to stick out his finger so she could feel how fat he was getting. Hansel fooled her over and over again by sticking out a chicken bone, but at last she could wait no longer. "Gretel, light the oven," she commanded. "Today I will feast." When the greedy witch poked her head in the oven to see if it was hot enough, Gretel gave her a mighty shove and banged the iron door behind her, then turned the handle to lock her in. Picture 7. At that moment the witch's spell ended. All of the gingerbread boys and girls who had formed a fence around the house came to life, laughing and shouting for joy. Suddenly the oven exploded, and out popped the witch. She had been baked into gingerbread herself. At the noise, the woodcutter came rushing up. Their stepmother had died, he told them, and he had been searching for them ever since. He led Hansel and Gretel and all the other children back to their homes, where they lived happily ever after.